Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury.
Electrifying!
Yes, guys, welcome back to the Cannon podcast. Happy Monday. I hope you're all doing very, very well. Welcome back to the main podcast of the week here on the Cannon podcast. I hope everyone's heads have returned from Jupiter because we are back to talk. Before we talk, Arsenal, I'm here with my boy, Rohan Jivan. Unfortunately, George can't be here today. Hello, Rohan.
Hello, sir. How are you?
I was going to say I'm very good because we are recording just post the another Spurs capitulation. It really is one of those things. No matter how topsy-turvy our season goes, we won yesterday, all went pear-shaped at one point. I was probably one of the most angriest moments of my Arsenal supporting life.
You were in the trenches as well.
It feels like a career, mate. But no matter what happens, we're not Spurs. Do you know what I mean? And I think we should take real pride in that.
This Gengen press that you've been applying on, and from day one, not gonna lie, I didn't watch the game properly. I had it on the background, and when the full-time whistle went, I was like, oh, let me go on Twitter. I reckon Alex is immediately on it. Even if he's not watched it, he's definitely on his case, and yeah, he was.
I was chopping up clips. I was doing everything, mate. I was doing everything. I've been on that man's case for a strong 18 months at this point. Thank you all for being here. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe. If you're listening to us on Spotify and Apple, leave us a little review. Why not? Please do so. Thank you all for being here. As you can all tell, I'm in a better mood than I was yesterday. In the instant reaction, I've kind of come away from it feeling more happy about the results and happy about the kind of the manner of things. Because and by the way, obviously we are going to talk about the incident and that thing, but equally, it's Monday now, and you know we could start to move on from that sort of stuff. So I want to just tailor the conversation a little bit. The whole thing isn't going to be about referees. Apologies, probably gone past that point. So we do want to talk about the game. But I think that there's positives to take from the game, even though it was overshadowed by that incident. And it's kind of a theme of this season that I sort of discussed on the instant reaction. I just want to get your take on before we go into it. In these difficult periods or when things like that happen, when it feels like such a mad season, it's really hard not to just remember that. Just remember that Wolves game as the game where that happened, or remember the going out to Newcastle, whatever it is. It's really hard to separate out what's going wrong and what's going right. And I always want to try and focus on, because there were things yesterday that went really well for us, how we reacted, how we responded, and I want to focus on that because I know we're going to talk about the referees, but I think that the Wolves game was kind of a perfect example of that. But it's actually spreads to me to the season, to overall the season. When we come to review it, we're going to remember this is a mad year, but actually there's been a lot of positive as well.
Yeah, and it's kind of like another one of those moments that we've had many times this season. And I mean, in that moment, I'm thinking to myself, and we'll obviously talk about it because I don't want to kind of not talk about it anyway, because this is an incident in which, had we have lost this game or drawn this game, we would have been talking about it, and rightly so. But at the same time, winning the game, that shouldn't mean we divert away from that conversation, even though it's a conversation that people don't want to listen to. And to be honest, as a podcaster, I don't really want to talk about it, but I think we have to do our own due diligence and we have to speak about it. But for me, we'll get into the specifics for sure, but I think the reaction after that moment was fantastic. Like, we've been in a scenario in which we are down to 10 men, we've had to play for prolonged periods, and we've had a lot of really good results in these sorts of scenarios. But I felt yesterday it was different in terms of our intent on the ball after going down to 10 men and what we were trying to do. I thought it was fantastic. And as you allude to, when you consider the level of turbulence we've had this season, and you can go for every single decision that has gone against us, and the big ones, from a player's point of view, it could feel so demoralising in which something like this has happened again. But that's where I really want to focus on the players. I really want to focus on Mikel, because he did a couple of really smart things that I've mentioned on X, and I want to talk more about on this podcast, that had a massive impact in the outcome of the game. And yeah, I can't credit to the boys. Like, we give them a lot. As fans, when we don't win games of football, we're going to criticise players, we're going to criticise the manager. But equally, in those sorts of situations, we have to give them a lot of credit, because the level of pride in that performance, it was fantastic.
There's a group there that I don't want to skip over. It's the Declan Rice, the Salibas, the Gabriels, the Timbers, the Havertz. Okay, we're going to have a conversation about him actually on the pod as well. But in terms of the running that he does and how hard he's fighting for the team, let's not lose that in the bad decisions and injuries and whatever, because there's a group there that just deserve all our praise. Talk me through though the incident. Where were you watching? How did you feel? I think I sort of went into like shutdown mode, and what I do under stressful situations, I don't know if anyone can relate to this, I just go non-verbal. Like I'm just like okay, and I get all sarcastic, and I'm like, oh right, okay, that's fine. My friend was in the room, and he was sort of half watching it. He was trying to order a McDonald's, and he was like, "What do you want?" I was like, "Chicken select." He was like, 3 or 5? 5. Do you want an apple pie? No. I was so aware of how rude I was being, but I couldn't get out of it. I was just like, I hate this. I go non-verbal. I go just fully like catatonic. I hated it. But yeah, talk me through how that played out for you when that incident happened with Michael Oliver.
I mean, head was on Mars. I said to you before we went live, if I was on that instant reaction, I reckon the channel would have got cancelled, because the things I had in my head were not for the public to see here, to be honest. And I don't know about you, but when a bad decision like that happens, I kind of like just don't talk to anyone. I'm in silence, complete silence. It's like, yeah, it's so frustrating, but I've become numb to these sorts of scenarios and situations. And go back to the podcast, the Brighton podcast that we did, in which that Saliba penalty was given. And we spoke about how we felt in that moment, and the frustration of incompetent refereeing hurting us in that moment again. And I said, it's not going to be the last. We're going to be on this podcast and we're going to be talking about another decision this season, and we're going to be, again, feeling very frustrated. And here we are again, feeling frustrated. The only difference is that we won the game. But I want to reiterate the fact that we need to talk about this, because this is something that is so frustrating for fans, and it's not exclusive to Arsenal, right? I have stronger beliefs on this, but I don't want to bring it on this podcast, because ultimately I can't quantify it in retrospect with other clubs in the Premier League, because all teams get a level of incompetence. But I look at Arsenal, I look at the things we've had over the years. Granit Xhaka against Swansea back in 2016. David Luiz against Wolves, against Chelsea. Declan Rice against Brighton. Martinelli against Wolves. Yesterday, Saliba, the penalty against Brighton. Brentford game, which they forgot to draw the lines.
Yeah, oh my God.
There's so many things that have happened over the years that leave me feeling really frustrated. And do you know what it is, Alex? Like, I think football fans in general, what we are all in unison of is, if there is a game of football that is played and we lose the game fair and square, we'll feel frustrated on the players, we'll feel frustrated on the manager. It could be the players, the manager, or a combination of the two. And we'll voice it. But it's a pill that you can swallow. It's a pill that anyone can swallow. And that, for me, I'm always acceptant of. Like, for example, Newcastle away this season, we didn't play well. We didn't deserve anything from the game. The referee wasn't a discussion point. And we're frustrated in that moment. But that is a frustration I like to have when we lose a game of football. I don't like to have frustration in which the conversation goes around referees, because it is a sport of entertainment. It is a sport that is there for fans to be exposed to, that they enjoy, and that the talking point shouldn't be on external factors of referees not being able to do their job properly. It's annoying, but we have to talk about it, because it's just not good enough. And like, I think some things in life are very simple, in terms of, like, you see a solution, it's so obvious, but we don't look at it. And in this context, it's like, for me, I've said it many times, just go and get the best referees out there in Europe. And if there is any way in which we can get rid of this organisation, because it's not just Michael Oliver, it's not just Darren England, it's the whole thing. And guess what's going to happen on Monday as well? You're going to see that gaslighter, Dermot Gallagher, go on that show, Ref Watch, and he's going to literally find every possible way to justify that decision. It happens all the time, and it's so annoying, because I don't want to talk about this. But we have to talk about it, because it's incompetence, and it has cost us many times this season. It didn't cost us on Saturday, but it is something that happens time and time again. And this sport in this country, the Premier League being the best league out there in the world, deserves better quality. And I'm sorry, it's just not good enough. And I just feel numb to it, to be honest.
Yep, I can't say I disagree with anything you said there. I think, look, I want to come to sort of I guess a new point that I have, and something I've been ruminating on. But I want to just run through a couple of things. I think firstly, it's really difficult. I was thinking about this today because you have to accept a level where people can make mistakes. You have to accept that. You can't, like, if ultimately they are people, they're going to make mistakes, and then the question is how much is acceptable. And the bigger issue for me, actually, is not Michael Oliver making the mistake, really. Yeah. And I'll come back to him in a second. It's actually the VAR not looking at it. That is the bigger one, because Michael Oliver can make a mistake on the pitch. It can happen. We have to accept as fans that referees are human. They're going to make mistakes. We have to decide how much we're willing to do and support them to make as few mistakes as possible. The support was not there. Because for whatever reason, these guys, and that's where I look to the incompetence and the inability to do your job. If you think that call is an immediate red card, not even worth checking, not even worth saying to Michael Oliver, mate, I think you might, even just, mate, it's a big call. You should just have a look. Just you don't even have to clear it. Just have a look and decide that you're happy to do this. And then to the 2-1 maybe person out there going, yeah, but it's studs high, whatever. Okay, to you, I'm speaking to you right now. Put it this way. Do you want that to be a red card in football? Do you just forget the fact that it is or it isn't? If you were writing the rules today, you were rewriting the rules of football, would you want that to be a red card? Would you want games to get ruined, basically? Because it does get ruined. The quality goes. You stop seeing the patterns. You stop seeing what teams actually want to do. You stop seeing the players that you want to see, that you pay to go and see. Do you want... And the amount of yellow cards and red cards is increasing around Europe. I'm telling you, go look at the numbers. They're increasing. These guys are not getting out of the way to allow the entertainment product to go. So that's a really important point to make. Second point to make. I said this on the Instant Reaction, so I don't want to go over this. People know my views on the conspiracy aspect of it, that Arsenal are specifically refereed differently. I think you can go and speak to United fans and they'll say, well, the Bruno red card was crazy. You can go speak to Aston Villa fans, they'll tell you the John Duran one a couple of weeks ago was crazy. I'm not saying I know, I'm saying you can't be 100% sure. But where I am starting to have a little bit of wiggle room, and maybe where my position is slightly changing, is with specifically Michael Oliver. And let me just speak on this quickly. That's 3 precedent-setting incidents for Michael Oliver managing games where he's refereeing Arsenal games managed by Mikel Arteta. The first one is the Martinelli double yellow. That's never happened before, as far as I know. I think someone said it's happened in Scotland, but that's never happened before or since in the Premier League. That's a precedent-setting decision made by a referee. The Martinelli incident against Wolves in 2022, right? Then you have the Trossard one, which was you get the still. He is blowing as he kicks. I guarantee, I don't know who. I'm sure someone could do these numbers in terms of the blow and the kick away, the timing in between it. I've never seen anything like it before or since in terms of the reaction time. That's precedent setting, that it doesn't matter when you go after the whistle. If you kick it after the whistle, even if it's 0.1 seconds or whatever the numbers is, that's precedent setting. And by the way, in all of this, I'm ignoring the other things like the Kovacic yellow, and I'm ignoring balls being kicked away like João Gomez in that game. I'm ignoring all the bad calls. Yeah. I'm just talking about precedent setting things. And finally, I've never seen a red card given for that ever in my life. For the Miles Lewis Skelly. That's 3 precedent-setting things for Michael Oliver against Mikel Arteta. We saw David Coote openly say he doesn't like Jurgen Klopp. That should be a massive red flag to Arsenal fans, because there is, and again, referees are human. I'm really not the conspiracist. In fact, I took 300-400 comments all abusing me for trying to fight the referee's side, whenever it was that last incident that came up, I think around the Brighton game. I'm really not that guy. So it takes a lot for me to say this. I would say to Arsenal, if there's people speaking, ask the question. Go to PGMOL and say, look, there's 3 precedent-setting refereeing decisions made by the same guy against the same team. We've seen another one of your referees recently tell us that he didn't like a referee. Is that what's going on here? And if it isn't, then we need to have a serious conversation about why that's happening and why these outliers are occurring. Because that's where I said, because you get other guys and that's incompetence or whatever. But when that's happening with the same guy in this season, sorry, I've gone on for a long time, but it's really interesting to me. That's the real thing.
But this is why I'm saying, Arsenal have a better position to go and ask this question after winning the game. After winning it. Because had we have lost or drawn, I think sometimes there could be, Arsenal complaining, not winning the game or drawing the game, looking at the referees. But we've won the game, right? We've got the 3 points. Still ask that question. Still ask it. Because you will not see this decision happen again. And this is where I don't just look specifically at Michael Oliver. I'm looking at Darren England in VAR, and that's why I said the entire organisation, it is just full of incompetence. And then you've got someone like Mike Dean, right, in that David Coote scenario. What he's more focused on, when he was asked about that specific incident of David Coote, he was more focused on that video not being released. Like, he feels bad for David Coote in that scenario, that he feels for him that it's being released. This is what, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And I don't want to say what I really want to say, to be honest, but it's just, it just ruins the game, mate. And this is where I'm like, like I said, I've got beliefs that I don't want to project on here because I can't quantify it, because I don't think this is exclusive to Arsenal. Other teams get shocking decisions as well. But as an Arsenal fan, and some of the decisions I've seen my team get over the years, just with Mikel Arteta as a manager, I can go all the way back to when Wenger was manager, and I can go to many decisions. Coquelin red card against Spurs, Koscielny against Man City, Ainsley Maitland-Niles against Leicester. That was Michael Oliver as well. Ainsley Maitland-Niles against Leicester. I could go to many different scenarios, but the grand scheme of it is that it ruins the product. It does ruin the product. Yes. And for me, that first half, there were so many good things that I saw from Arsenal. There were also good things that I saw from Wolves as well, But the game completely alters and it changes into a different type of game because of one person being yet again the centre of attention. And the worst thing about him as well is when he makes these decisions, just look at him. Look how smug he is as well. I can't stand him. I honestly can't.
And I'm telling. It's so interesting on that specific incident, and I'm also glad you brought up the other point. Even the Wolves players are shocked. That's how bad it is. Even the Wolves players are shocked, and this is the thing. And I'm really glad you said that. It comes to a point where this isn't actually about Arsenal fans or about I was going. This is the integrity of the sport. This is the thing that we all love, and we put rivalries aside and Spurs are rubbish or whatever. We love that. I love that. I just did it at the top of the pod. This is ruining. And honestly, if we'd lost that game yesterday, and it did even a little bit already, there was a point at halftime where I was going, "What is the actual point? If you can't get a fair, if they're playing with a round ball and we're playing with a square ball, I don't want to watch the sport. I don't want to. It's not actually fair. So I can't continue. And what they don't realise is they think that obviously football is the most popular sport in the country. And I think around the world by far. Honestly, obviously they have that, and it's the best league in the world, absolutely. But if you're not careful, seriously, if you get a reputation that the refereeing in this country and the reputation that it is, that will start, and people will just start to watch other stuff. Honestly, there was a part of me that was like, if I didn't genuine point. If I didn't make content about Arsenal, I think I wouldn't have watched the second half. I'm being deadly serious. I wouldn't have watched it because I was, what's the point? I want to watch it, but why? And I think they have this arrogance a little bit that they basically think, well, whatever, no one's going to stop watching. No, they will. Yeah. They will stop watching if they continue to see their sport and their entertainment product. And this is, again, back to the point that I made at the beginning around getting the referees out of the way. They always forget it's entertainment. It's entertainment. It's for fun. It's what millions of people around the world use as a release. So get out of the way. It's not about you. The last ditch thing you should be doing is sending someone off. The last thing you want to do in a game. I honestly think how many is that for us? 4 in a season? I think it should be.
It should be one. It should be one
a season. One on average. Yeah. That everyone gets one, and that is a crazy thing. That's a crazy idea that, because there should be sin bins, there should be all these things. The last thing we want to do, unless it is a kamikaze, whatever it is, challenge, that is the last thing we want to do because we don't want to ruin the entertainment. But they're so ready to get the card out. He couldn't wait.
He couldn't wait.
He could not
wait.
you
know what? I don't know about you, but when that challenge happened and I saw him, I thought he's going to give a red. I could just feel it. In that moment, I knew he was going to give a red in that situation. And that's how crazy it is. And for me, it's very simple, right? When you talk to your friends about football and things that bring you joy in the sport, nobody will ever talk about the referee.
I thought the reffing was great today.
Nobody will ever talk about the referee. Nobody. Yeah. Honestly, they'll talk about players do you see that goal at the weekend? Or do you see that dribble from that player, etc.? Nobody wants to talk about the referees. That is why I want to reiterate this, is that football and what brings the entertainment is the footballers, not the referees. Just do your job adequately and that's it. That's all you need to do. And it isn't just Michael Oliver. It is the fact that VAR, I don't know if they did look at it or didn't look at it, but ultimately it's incompetence across all areas. And it's the entire organisation. And it's not going to change. You get rid of Michael Oliver, right? He gets sacked, let's say, Monday morning. Someone else will come in and the problem still lies there. The moment this changes and the game improves in this country is if you rip apart that organisation and you get the best referees in the world to ref our game. That is the answer. It's not going to happen, probably. Well, 90% sure it's not going to happen. And that's why we'll come on to another podcast in whether it's the near future or distant future, and we'll be having a very similar conversation on another type of decision. It's inevitable. Said it after Brighton when we did that podcast, the Saliba penalty. I said, we're going to be on another podcast and we're going to be talking about referees. Here we are again. And I'll say it again. Now, we'll be on a future podcast and we'll be talking about referees again.
Yep. And as I said, I'm okay with, ref's going to make a call, a bad call, but when it feels like everyone makes mistakes. And I don't think anyone expects referees to be perfect. They expect them to be accountable, consistent, and clear.
Yeah.
And none of those are there.
Just really quickly, Alex, as well, right? Last week, we spoke about the Aston Villa game, and we spoke about the goal that got disallowed for Mikel Merino and the handball of Kai Havertz. That was a great refereeing performance, and it was a great use of VAR. We didn't even talk about it. There was obviously a lot on the timeline about was it handball or not? It was handball, and how quickly they did it. That was fantastic, and we spoke strictly on the performance, and we spoke about the frustration we had in a 10-minute interval in which we didn't defend well enough individually. But we didn't talk about the referees, and in fact, I think I mentioned that time in which it was a really good use of VAR in that moment. That's what I want to talk about, praising it, not like today.
Yep. Look, let's move forward because we're not going to solve the refereeing now, and I feel like I've said my piece. Look, I think really what you're saying is around getting the best referees and it's funding, but it's a serious conversation. I think ultimately I just want to end on this. Let's not make it tribal. We've got to come together. And actually around that instance yesterday, I did see United fans, Liverpool fans, and Newcastle fans, and Tottenham fans, and everyone just going, what? And the more we can do that, the better, honestly. And the players need to, and you sort of alluded to it earlier, it is the players that give us the joy in this sport. And that's why when they're dead on their feet as well, I start to go, who's running this sport? Who's this really for? Do they realise what the players are giving them? The products these guys, the level these guys are at, and how good they are at football. Of course they're handsomely paid. I'm not saying they're not, but you could be paid £1 million a week or £1 a week. You still can only run a certain amount. It doesn't matter. So we've got our priorities all wrong, and we've been given the sport over to the hands of these guys who aren't good enough, and it's not okay. We though responded really well, and I thought, and I'd love you to go away and sort of talk about the changes that Mikel made, because I think I've seen you sort of talk about this a little bit. But I'm so pleased. I thought the first half was, when we're talking sort of 11v11, I said this on this interaction. I thought that Mikel basically, there's things that I look out for, and I don't think I've said this to you. There's things that Mikel looks out for. I look out for with Mikel, that when he thinks a team are bad, and there was all the checklist. We're stepping onto their keeper. We're playing through them. We're not giving them time on the ball. We're chipping balls. When the ball's loose, we're just knocking balls into their box. and just hoping that one of the defenders will basically make a mistake. There was a lot of stuff that I was going, we think they're not good. Yeah. We didn't make enough of that time, I didn't think. Number of reasons for that. I didn't think Nwaneri necessarily had his best game. That's okay. I'm not here to slam a 17-year-old. It's going to happen. Thought he was a little bit shy off the ball, not showing particularly to feet. I thought the pods either side, the triangles just weren't quite there. The movement wasn't quite popping for me, and that's okay. And then there were some missed opportunities, and we'll come on to Kai Havertz later. Then the incident happened, and then we reacted. But yeah, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on those reactions.
Yeah, I mean, just strictly focusing on 11v11 to begin with, and I think
for those listening, Rohan just rubbed his hands together.
But just strictly focusing on 11v11 for a second, and Mikel spoke about it previously in terms of how he kind of approaches games, and he looks very much on the familiarity between each game and how close they are. And actually, when you look at the Dinamo Zagreb game and Wolves, in terms of how both teams set up, it's very similar, that 5-2-3/5-3-2 out of possession shape, and looking to kind of squeeze the centre of the pitch as much as possible. And I spoke about it in the Thursday TCP Live in terms of there is this tactical homogeneity. I might have butchered that.
You have, but that's okay.
There's a lot of that. More teams aren't looking to start in a low block. They're looking to kind of squeeze at the center of the pitch because they want to be in a position which they can press higher and win the ball back, etc. And that's what Wolves are trying to do in this game as well. But what I want to focus on is the formation, the structure that we are looking to deploy against these teams that play over back five. And it is the diamond. We tried to get in this shape, and I'll actually give some of the things I didn't like about it in a second, but it's kind of like, you have Thomas Partey in that single pivot. We're looking to put our centre-backs, our wide centre-backs being Gabriel and Timber, really wide to kind of stretch them laterally to open up space in the middle. And then you've got your midfield three just behind the front three of Nwaneri, Miles Lewis-Skelly kind of on the sides of that diamond, and then Rice was actually playing on the tip of the diamond. And I don't personally think that is great use of Declan Rice. We did it in the Dinamo Zagreb game, but obviously he's had two really good performances. But I still think long-term, I don't like the usage of Rice in that specific role. But I think that the main focus on why we do this is to kind of get six further ahead on the last line to overload the opposition's last line, which is a back five in Wolves' case. And that is the idea, that was the intent. We weren't able to see it consistently because of obviously the red card, but that was the idea. And I think with Miles, and we'll get onto the reaction in a second, but I think with Miles, it's such a shame because he was on course in dropping yet again another 8/9 out of 10 performance.
First carry he does. Yeah. Wow.
Do you know what it is? I saw a Barcelona account, fan account on X talking about Musiala and how he kind of converts static situations to dynamic ones. Ones that are stationary, in which you've got the opposition in their settled shape and you're trying to find solutions, moving the ball from side to side. Miles Lewis-Skelly, when he receives the ball in those areas, he just increases the pace of the game with that turn, that carry. It goes from static to dynamic in an instance.
Can I say something I might regret?
Go on.
The more exciting talent for me right now, of the two, of Ethan, out of Ethan and Miles, I'm more excited by not because I think necessarily one has the better ceiling or whatever, but for what he can give us in our game model and what we need right now today to add to our game. Miles, mate.
Yeah, and when we talked about central progression and Arsenal being right towards the bottom end of the table in that regard, and that is by design. Although we've mentioned it many times, I think we can kind of move that kind of scale a little bit more to trying to penetrate through teams centrally. Miles is something who does that in every single game that he plays in, and you saw it in the first couple of minutes, and it's kind of that Musiala-esque in terms of being able to receive in pressured scenarios, using your body really well to shield the ball, and then being progressive, and he was fantastic in that regard. I thought his passing as well, high up the pitch, I don't know if you remember that moment in which he finds Rice in the box and Rice can't sort his feet out quick enough. And also defensively, he was fantastic again. I think his defensive performances against Kulusevski, against Morgan Rogers, these are some of the toughest ball carriers out there in the Premier League at number 8, and he's finding it very easy dealing with them under contact. And yeah, I saw the idea, I saw the intent. I do think with this shape, though, there are weaknesses in terms of if you do lose the ball, you are more vulnerable in transition. But I don't think we were able to see it in full fruition because of obviously the red card. But I really liked our reaction, and we'll probably get into that as well.
Yeah. Yep. Again, one of our favourites, isn't he? Data Analytic EPLs does some great stuff on this game, and he just does some really different stuff, which I really like. Which is so go check him out at Data Analytic EPL on X. One of the things I noticed there's a Viz basically, which is the progressive passes for the away team, was the lack of passing from out to in into the half space on the right hand side. I think that was one of the issues for me on that right hand side. Was there was no. I don't know if maybe you can talk to me a little bit more about it, but I think it might be to do with how Wolves set up in terms of how they occupy those spaces, with the 8 not having to move out because there's the wing back. The 8's not really having to jump around necessarily. I did feel that was a problem. In terms of how we reacted though when we went down to 10, talk us through what you saw.
Yeah, so this is going to get very nerdy and very dweebish very quickly. But I think for me...
That's why we love you.
But I think what I really liked about this is there were 2 changes that Mikel made. Now, when we go down to 10 men, it's become a staple in terms of out of possession, we set up in this 5-3-1 block. Again, with the same idea, not allowing teams to penetrate through us centrally and being very aggressive in the wide areas, because those sorts of spaces are very easy to press and it's more manageable. The big change that Mikel made in terms of positionally was Declan Rice. So Declan Rice moved from the left to the right hand side, and the reason for that was to control Matheus Cunha. If he was able to get on the ball, he likes to operate from Wolves' perspective in the left half space, our perspective in the right half space. Having Declan Rice there, you're looking to control your most dangerous opposition player, and you want your best out of possession player in midfield to be able to do that role. And that switch was very good. The other switch, and I want to talk about this a lot because I think we spoke about it on TCP Live before, is the change in our press in that second half. Now, usually, and what most teams do, and we did it in the first half as well, is that we look to force teams towards their left-hand side. You know, their left centre-back getting on the ball, and then increasing the pressure as we force them touchline. In other words, and I'll try and break it down more simply, is that the goalkeeper, we are attacking their strong foot in the press. So Kai Havertz is pressing from right to left, right? Left to right. He's pressing from left to right. And the reason why he does that is because the goalkeeper at baseline is the free man. And we usually ask ourselves, every team pretty much does this. Teams are pressing the opposition to go towards their left-hand side. But why are they doing it? It's because you want to make the goalkeeper's life as difficult as possible. If you are attacking the strong foot of the goalkeeper and forcing him to go to the left, he can't open his body open. And also, you're forcing him to potentially use his weaker left foot, and you're restricting the range of motion in which he's able to kind of play passes. That is why we do that. And that is why you tend to see Ødegaard step on to the left centre-back, and we're trying to keep the opposition to their left-hand side and our right-hand side. And, we do that in every single game because most goalkeepers are right-footed. In the second half, after going down to 10 men, our mindset and our intention changed. Kai Havertz was pressing the other way around, and we're looking to attack Jose Sar's weaker foot. So it's more favourable for Jose Sarr because we're forcing Wolves to play towards their right-hand side. And Jose Sarr can open his body up and he's going to be more comfortable in build-up in that scenario. But we accepted that trade-off because Aït-Nouri and Cunha, in terms of partnerships, that is Wolves' most dangerous partnership as an attacking unit. We wanted to control that. We wanted to not allow them to have as much involvement in this game. And we can do that by forcing Wolves to play more towards their right-hand side, forcing Matt Doherty to have more of the ball, and having Calafiori there, when they do go long, to be that guy who can meet the ball, be strong aerially, who had a fantastic performance, and we can keep play in that side and stop Matheus Cunha and Aït-Nouri from having the ball. So the first half, you're kind of seeing Arsenal pressing their normal way, but in the second half, being a man down, we needed to control their most dangerous players, and by pressing Wolves to their other side and allowing Jose Sarr to have more favourable conditions, we accepted that trade-off because we knew that Wolves being on their right-hand side, it's away from Matheus Cunha and Aït-Nouri, it's a lot more favourable for us. And that is why they didn't create a lot. In that game, in that second half, they did not create many chances, barring that little spell in which Cunha forces the save from Raya, and then the corner, he's a little bit unlucky. So I really like that change.
Yeah, and I think it's as you say, it's a trade off really is what you're looking at, and I think if you look into the numbers, it seemed to work. 0.5 expected goals, but their biggest leap, so I think 0.2 or sort of 0.3 or something, was that Sarabia chance, and then throughout the entire rest of the game, which is by the way sort of half an hour playing 11v10, they created barely anything, and I think that was one of the ways we did that. Yeah, so it was an impressive performance, and these things do get missed, understandably, because it's in the incident of things and people aren't necessarily watching as closely as you because you're a dweeb. But I did think we were, I was impressed. And also, they had a lot more possession probably than we would like them to, but actually in terms of their zone 14 touches, much lower than ours. In terms of their deep touches, almost a third less than us. They, in terms of the field tilt, in terms of who had the final third entries, etc., we were way on top, even when we were 11v10. And these little things do massively help with that. I think also helping with that was the performances on an individual basis. Maybe let's come on to those. Again, Gabriel and Saliba, Saliba coming back from an injury I thought was terrific. Jurriën Timber has been just a machine. Kai Havertz, though, I want to come on to him maybe on a more negative side in a second, but I also thought for a guy, I think you've got the exact numbers, don't you? But in terms of the amount of minutes he's played, and he's got the most distance covered in the Premier League between August 2024 to November 2024, exactly tied with Bruno Guimaraes in first. And on that top 5 list is Bruno Guimaraes, Lewis Cook at Bournemouth, Kulusevski, and Yuri Tielemans. And Kai Havertz is up there as a centre forward, and the rest of those guys are central midfielders, basically, or sort of certainly inside players. And that tells you the numbers that he's putting up and the amount of running he's doing. And I think he's missed even football within that period as well. Yeah. So it tells you how much he's running when he's there. He works so hard for this team, and I want to come onto the other side of that conversation in just a second. But in terms of the running and the commitment to this team, Calafiori probably deserves another shout. There was a lot of really, really underappreciated performances, I think.
I think we'll get onto Kai more, but just looking at his minutes, right? And this is why it'll be interesting to have this discussion, because I'm a lot more sympathetic to him because of the context of him being our only out-and-out striker. Now, he's played 18 Premier League games, all 90 minutes. 90 minutes 18 times in the Premier League this season so far. Played 120 minutes against Manchester United. Played 90 minutes against Newcastle in the Carabao Cup. Has played 5 out of the 7 Champions League games, completed the entire 90 minutes. I think only David Raya and Saliba have played more minutes than Kai Havertz this season so far.
2,500 minutes for Arsenal.
He's been run into the ground, and the level of selfless work that he does for this team, it needs to be considered, because it is a massive part of Arteta's game model. I think it's also a weakness of his in terms of, from an attacking point of view, attackers, the workload that they're given in that aspect. But he does so much for the team, and we'll obviously get into the negatives around Kai Havertz. But I can't go too much into him because of what he is doing for the team. In terms of other individual performances that were fantastic, I mean, Declan Rice again, his level since Chelsea away has been incredible. And the only criticism I could give Declan Rice since that period is probably he should have a couple more goals to his name. He's missed some really big...
He knows that, though.
And he knows that as well. He said that in that post-match interview after Dinamo Zagreb. You think back to the Newcastle big moment Saka puts on a plate for him. Man United, he missed a couple. Dinamo Zagreb scores, but he misses a big chance that's kind of like eating him alive. He also had a really good moment in the first half that I alluded to, with Miles Lewis-Skelly putting him through, and he just can't get his feet sorted quickly. But I think with Rice, we've gone on to his individual qualities many times, but for me, his level is always really good at baseline, right? But it feels like, for me, when the temperature rises and during adversity, his level goes up even higher. And that, for me, it's kind of like with Bukayo Saka, in which Bukayo Saka, even in games in which he doesn't play well, which is very, very, very rare, he will still produce glimpses of magic, and he will give you the opportunity to be productive, allow others to be productive by putting it on a plate for them. Like the Newcastle moment. Declan Rice is very similar from a midfield sense in terms of during adversity, when it isn't going well, he is the guy who drives his team forward and he takes responsibility. And that is such a massive quality to have. And I think maybe his West Ham experience as well, in which you're always in adversity there, has helped him at Arsenal. Although obviously the expectations are different, but I feel like there is a bit of a correlation there as well.
Do you know what? I think that's a brilliant point. And I think this is another thing that when we look to the market, another reason why I think we're slightly underrating the EFL and players from there, and I'd like to see us do a little bit more business from there, because the nature of the football, especially when players like Cunha and stuff. Although I did say on the instant reaction, didn't love his attitude when he missed the pass to Hwang, I think it was, and he blamed Hwang and that sort of stuff. I just hate as a footballer. But regardless, well, maybe we need a bit more selfishness. Who knows? Depends on what you want to argue. But players like Rice have been in those game states. They've been in 10 men. They've been under the cosh. They've been, they've been in those situations. And it's going to come across like I'm just picking on him again. But, a Martin Ødegaard has been in the best teams basically since he was 15 years old, and you need that player as well. But the Gabriels and the the Rices,
the Ben Whites as well.
The Ben Whites as well. You can see why they can step up because of those situations. So yeah, I think that's a great point. Let's come back to Havertz. He runs so much. He runs that ball so much. He does so much for the team. He's constantly looking for space. I think he's such a willing presser. I think he's getting himself in these opportunities. But the real thing that I felt was, and you sort of alluded to it, it's actually, I don't want to blame Kai, because what I'm about to ask for is not something he's ever been. And this is where I think the conversation gets a bit stuck between people who argue about Kai. Basically, what people want is, as George might refer to it, as a box dominator. The way I use the word I use is thrust. Depends which word you want to take. I'm sure Rohan's got his own word that we all use, but it's thrust in an attack for me. It's someone who can go get out of my way, a bit of a bully, someone who on an away day, that game I felt was lacking in quality, and all it needed was one moment. It felt like one of those days where it was going to be a one-moment game, and the moment turned out to be a refereeing decision. But it was one of those games where I guarantee if that had been 11v11, that would have been frustrating. 60 minutes, 70 minutes, we're going, who's going to get us the winner? And on those days, Kai doesn't suit us, because I don't believe he's going to pull something out of the hat in that way. He has done in the past, but reliably. Maybe that plays Bukayo Saka for us, so again, it's not fair to ask him to do that. But really, the skills that I'm referring to are that physical ability to move people out of the way. What I'm referring to is that ability to, when you're going for a cross, to almost bully the ball into the goal. To Alexander Isak, create that moment of separation and just no backlift straight into the back of the top corner. It's just not who he is. And on away days like that, you need that sort of player in your forward line. And I'm looking around the market, and I'm looking at the centre forward market, and I'm going, there are players like that. There are the Osmans and the Sheshkos and the Yokeres and the Omrodjians, and it feels like there are strikers out there and Isak, guys who can do that for you. So I have a lot of sympathy for those guys who go, this guy just isn't it. I also have a lot of sympathy for those guys who are like, you don't understand Havertz and whatever, and we need him around. But on days like that day, I was like, I like, basically, I guess my point is this. I have days where I'm like, nah, Kai's perfect for us. It's often at home. And have days where like, no, we need something else, and it's often away. And that's kind of where I'm at.
I'm a bit torn on this, because for me, I look at Kai right now, and I'm going back to the minutes and the workload and the heavy yards he is doing. I do have a feeling, well, for me, it's not a feeling, I'm pretty sure that is impacting other aspects of his game, right? So for me, in terms of the chances, if you've watched the pod and if you've watched my opinions, I'm okay with my players missing chances. I've always have been, always will be. I'm okay with it. Obviously, when it's to the extent of like, Manchester United, when he's missing absolute sitters, that's a different level. But, and I actually do think, Kai is quite lucky after this game, because had we have not won, we would have been looking at him. And that is the reality. And I think it would be more than fair to look at him, because there were some big opportunities that he did miss. But I sit in the camp of, players will miss chances. It happens, It's down on you as a collective unit to create more and generate more. And then it becomes a game of law of averages. But I look at Kai, and I agree. He's not going to be the guy that is reliably going to get you 30 goals a season. He's not going to do that. but he is going to give you a lot of quality in other aspects that we saw in the 2024 run-in from the moment in which Mikel transitioned away from having him start nominally in midfield to up front, and the record is there right in front of us. We were that close to winning a Premier League title. And that is why I look at Kai Havertz, and I think, for me, the key to getting him to another level, to getting him back to that level that we know, is giving him help and going into the market. Because I can tell you now, right, Kai Havertz may not be a box dominator or have the thrust that you would want, but he certainly has more thrust and dominates the box than what we've seen recently. You know, last season, Konate, Van Dijk, Mickey van der Ven, Romero, some really difficult centre-backs, and he bullied them. He did bully them. Go and watch those games back. So there is a clear physical drop-off, and it goes back to the minutes and how much game time he is playing. And, like, there's no way in hell Kai Havertz can't dominate Archie Gray at centre-back, right? But Archie Gray dominated him in that game. You know, back to goal.
Yeah.
That I can't see that in my mind. And for me, Kai Havertz is never going to be the number 9 that everyone visions of wanting at your club, you know, and he's not going to be that. But Kai Havertz can be a very, very impactful player if we support him, and he needs help. It goes back to the wages, though, and I've said it many times. I don't have a problem with the transfer fee of Kai Havertz. I've said it. But the wages, I wasn't happy with that. I wasn't happy with what we put him on, so... Yeah.
The cost per annum is crazy, and I do think when he's fit and firing, he's not on crazy minutes, and he's got support. And you imagine dovetailing a Benjamin Šeško, who's still, by the way, still probably 18. As we, me, you, and George were probably saying, he's still probably 18, 24 months away from being the thing that everyone wants him to be. But imagine dovetailing Šeško with a Kai Havertz. I think that could be a brilliant partnership. They could play together. They can share minutes at number 9. Kai Havertz can go out wide. By the way, I think he's brilliant out on the right hand side. So I'm in no way suggesting Kai Havertz is out of my team and gone. He especially even as a fourth attacker or a 12th man, he is perfect. By the way, Leandro Trossard has played 66% of the Premier League minutes. I can see Kai Havertz, if he was in the squad and not in the first 11, which is a horrible way of putting it anyway, he'd be playing 70-80% of Premier League minutes just because he'd be getting starts, but maybe he isn't always right for every single game, and that's okay. That's not who he is. I do just want to hammer home this point, though, around away and versus home. Champions League, he has 1 away goal, which was Sporting. Everything else, the 5 other contributions, were all at home. In the Premier League, he has 2 GA away from home all season, which was the goal away at West Ham and an assist away at Fulham. Everything else is at home. And when you watch the way he responds to those misses, that's sometimes where I get so I don't feel him getting angry. I feel him just sort of, there's that slight, the drop of the shoulders and the slight apathy. Whereas I feel like someone like a Declan Rice, you can see how angry he is with himself, and sometimes you need a bit of that, and that's where the thrust can come from. Sometimes.
Do you know what it is? I think the big frustration that people have with Kai right now, correct me if I'm wrong, is the chances he's missing, right, in front of goal. Like, they're massive chances. Now we look at Benjamin Šeško, and both me and you, George, massive fans of Benjamin Šeško, right? But if you are a fan that wants a ruthless killer in front of goal, Benjamin Šeško isn't that right now. So right, he's going to score you some outrageous goals. For me, it's very much an Alexander Isak sort of situation where you invest early before the price becomes not gettable. That is Benjamin Šeško. He is in that sort of mould of an Isak in that aspect. You invest early in the talent, you get him, you mould them, and you reap the rewards in the near future. I think he's more ready than what a lot give him credit for. But if you want a killer and you want someone who's going to score 1 out of 1 opportunity in a game, Benjamin Šeško isn't that. So you're going to be frustrated with Benjamin Šeško. So it depends on which way you look at football.
I do hear that, mate, but also Benjamin Šeško might cannon one
that's
off
what
the
I'm
bar
saying.
Against Wolves, and he's going to take a shot from distance. He's going to push someone over to get to the goal, and that's sometimes what you need in those sorts of games, is someone who is just going to do everything, who would kill his own child to get a goal, and that's what I don't feel from Kai Havertz. And by the way, I'm not asking him to. Yeah. When I say that, I'm not. It's like asking Martin Ødegaard to. No, let me not pick on him. I've got an agenda. It's like asking Declan Rice to I don't know, put through to be in goal. It's just not worth the conversation. Don't talk about it. Or, why is he not a fullback doing overlapping runs? Well, that's not who he is. It's not worth the conversation. So Kai Havertz's skills and what he does, and if you just watch him, the way he creates space for others, the ability to bounce off him. I mean, the goal that even Rice scores, that's a perfect layoff in the box. That sort of stuff is just, and the availability, and there's so many qualities he has. He just, as you said earlier, needs support.
Yeah, and that's the driver for me. That
one.
is the driver for me. Like he needs support, because I think you're going to be able to see a much better Kai Havertz. He may not be the number 9 that you envision, and I've said it many times. Someone like Benjamin Sesko, if there is an opportunity to get him, I think he is the best striker prospect out there in the market. I stand by that. I think he's fantastic.
He's got everything.
But, and I know he can cannon one off, from outside the box, and something that we don't have enough of in terms of instinctive attacking play and playing with impulse as opposed to playing too much with your food. But, like I'll always mention it, if you are a fan that wants a killer, he's not that right now. That's where I stand. But if you're in that kind of idea of, Kai Havertz needs support, you want to invest in talent, Benjamin Sesko is right there. He's and that would help Kai so much.
And I think they could dovetail well, because I think the sort of the box quality is there for Šeško. It just needs putting. It all needs putting together, and that's fine, and they can dovetail. We had a bomber on Friday evening from David Ornstein, my friend. David Ornstein. I've got the little follows you. Haha, you losers. Me and my mate David. I sat next to him in the overlap. My bestie. Arsenal working on a deal to sign Sverre Nipan from Rosenborg. No agreement or decision on 18-year-old midfielder's future, so situation open. But talks with #Rosenborg and player camp advancing as Arsenal try to land Norway Youth International. Reports of him being at the Etihad yesterday, but then also David Ornstein was saying that he's not. City aren't after him, so maybe he was just there to talk to Erling Haaland. I don't quite know exactly what the situation is, but there's lots of stuff suggesting that he is on his way to Arsenal. Certainly we're in the picture. Detailed player breakdown of Sverre Nipan, please. We'll elite ball striking, elite turning radius,
exquisite in the heart,
exquisite half-base crossing. Yeah. We will do that with George. George has been talking about, obviously, people in our Discord were like, Alex, why haven't you done a scouted on Nipan? I was like, you've just seen Arsenal after an 18-year-old from Norway, and you've tagged me, not George.
I actually don't know how. I don't know how George knows this many players. He knew about him a year before. He was talking about him 18 months ago to a year ago. It's crazy, yeah. So we will do a scout on him at some point. The conversation I wanted to have before we sort of wrap up this section here and go on to questions is around kind of squad building. And we've sort of had a couple of questions about this, actually. I think we had someone on X asking us this, so forgive me, I can't find it. Where is it? You're smiling.
Yeah, here it is. From Charlie Davey. My chance to get my agenda out. It does interest me. Look, I'll just put it this way. Ødegaard, Nipan, 18 years old, chased by half of Europe, is not coming in to go and sit in the U21s. He will be in our first team squad. Ødegaard, Nipan, Ethan Wanyeri, Miles, Zubamendi, Rice. That's 6. We've already signed Marino. That's 7. I can't imagine we're just going to... If we're letting Jorginho and Partey go, I can't imagine we're probably not going to sign probably +1, so that's 8, plus Max Dowman, who there's a whole other conversation about, which I want to come to another point. We can talk about that as well. So that's 9 players there, I think, in terms of the midfield. Look, you need a big squad. But what do those players tell you about where we're headed? Can you picture things? It's just a lot of players to fit into the forward areas of our team. And I'm just curious.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because Mikel, in terms of how he builds this squad, there's been, when Arteta came to the club, there was a press conference that he did, and he spoke about how he's kind of alluding to his ideal midfield being that kind of out and out number 6 than 2 traditional number 8s. But obviously football evolves and changes, and you kind of also change your philosophy and your ideas around that as well, and the trends that are happening in today's game. So it's very difficult to picture. I mean, with Zubamendi, it looks like that's very likely. And again, I need to do more research on Zubamendi, but what it seems like is Arsenal moving more towards a traditional pivot. I hope, because I think that's the only way you're going to be able to unlock Declan Rice properly. I think Declan Rice recently at left centre mid, some of his best performances have been where he's underneath possession, he's facing the block, and then he's arriving in the box.
He's doing everything.
He's doing a bit of everything, but he's not someone who is just stationed between the lines in the opposition's block, not getting on the ball enough. Declan Rice is someone who needs to get on the ball a lot for you to be able to see his best influence of the game. And that can happen at number 6. That can also happen at left centre mid if you use him correctly and you use him in that sort of way. So it kind of feels like Arsenal might be moving more towards that kind of traditional number 10. And for Martin Odegaard, I've said it many times, I think football fans can be very fickle. I think recency bias is a killer. He hasn't had his best season. I think there's a lot of context there. But if the midfield is going to that sort of Declan Rice-Zubimendi partnership, it is going to force Odegaard to be a lot higher predominantly. And that is something that he has done. He has done it well, but I've never felt it is his best quality. I feel Martin Odegaard, right, in terms of finding space in the pockets, I would say he's world class at it. But in terms of delivering a consistent final ball, that's not his best quality.
Vieira. I've just forgotten about him.
But then the Vieira kind of thing is like, it's a lot more on theory, isn't it? In terms of from an Arsenal point of view, we've seen that quality, but we've not seen it in practice, and that's for a number of different reasons, not getting opportunities, etc. But I think with Odegaard I'd be interested to see what happens next season with Zubimendi and Rice. I know we're talking about Naipan and obviously Wanyeri, etc. But Zubimendi's the big one, isn't it? So that is going to be the driver of what we're going to be doing next season. And I think with Odegaard, the best season he's had at Arsenal, for me, it's not the 15 non-penalty goals. It's last season. It's where he was given that license to be that all phases midfielder, where he'd drop deep, he'd get on the ball a lot, and he was able to conduct and dictate play. But if you bring someone like Zubimendi and you've got someone like Declan Rice, then if you're looking to maximise Odegaard and have him in that sort of role that we saw last season, then that means Declan Rice is going to be higher. But then I don't think that is the best use of Declan Rice. Declan Rice needs to be box to box more if you're going to use him in that sort of way. So I'm a bit confused on it. But what I will say is Martin Odegaard is not going anywhere, because when you listen to Mikel Arteta's... Well, when Odegaard was out of this team, right, and he had the injury, Arteta mentioned it many times in terms of Arsenal's play and how much goes through Odegaard. Now, that's a positive and a negative, because then that could be you relying too much on your skipper, which I think we have done. But it's going to be very interesting to see how Martin Odegaard's role evolves next season, because the way I see it right now, he's going to have to adapt a bit, and he can do it, but I don't think he's going to be able to give us everything in a traditional number 10 like role. I agree with that. And I suppose it's just, even thinking about Saka, where's Saka's future, and as I mentioned, Vieira, there's just a lot of names, plus other midfield, is Musiala available? There's a lot. It feels like Arsenal's midfield is about to go through a bit of a revolution, as well as it feels like the defence is kind of settled. I don't think please God, we're not going to do anything in the goalkeeping position. There is obviously a conversation about our forward line, which is always going on, but the midfield has maybe been slightly missed. And there's a lot of names there, as I say, that I just think I'm just curious to see how it works out. And I think basically everyone might have a different role. I think as you were outlining there, I think Rice will have a different role. Obviously, if Zubimendi comes in, he's going to have a new role. Odegaard's going to have a different role. So many names. Yeah, it's curious, and I suppose that might be the place where the risk-reward engine is set in the midfield, and maybe we are moving to a slightly more not risk-averse, but what's the opposite of that? Risky, I guess. What's the other end of risk-averse? Do you not also think with these links as well, do you not think maybe it's just Arsenal adopting the mindset of the best attacking talents or best talents out there, let's go and get them. Let's go and get them as early as possible. And that's something I've been critical of the club in the past, in terms of if there's the opportunity to get the best talent out there, you sometimes don't have you kind of go away from your ideal idea of how your squad is. If the best talent is there, but then you have to kind of tweak your game model a bit, because the driver is always quality. I'm not saying, Nipan, however you pronounce it, is going to be the best thing since sliced bread. But if he is one of the top talents out there, which he is touted to be, just go and grab him. Go and grab him
and see how it works. So. And I'm never against signing players and just saying, let them battle out. Who wants the shirt? I really don't think that's a bad thing at all at a top club. I really don't. You're looking at a forward line of Madrid last season of Vinny and Rodrigo and Bellingham playing in the 10, and they go and sign Mbappe. It's like, well, one of you is going to have to change. So let's just see what happens. And ultimately, it's only that's the best talent out there. So let's go and do that. So I think you're right. Let's come to some questions. We're starting on our Discord. If you do want to join our Discord, you can join us on Patreon on a free trial. And you can get access to the Discord through that. If you want to stick around, you can do that as well. Or you can join as a YouTube member as well. We ask questions on Discord. We'll obviously prioritise the ones from Discord from the members, but we also ask on X as well. Rohan, do you have a question on Discord for me?
Well, I was looking at X, but I can go on Discord.
You can go. We can go on it. Let's prioritise our lovely Discorders. I've got a question. From Dini, who says, a bit of a different question. Our last direct free kick was scored by Ødegaard in 2021. Very surprised, by the way, that Wanyeri took that one yesterday, considering who was over.
How frustrated, though, were you with how long it took?
Yeah, crazy. And sometimes, I know what they're doing on the corners, but sometimes when we're losing games and we're delaying on the corner, I'm like, just put it in the box.
Yeah, please.
I know, and people will be like, no, come on, it's a good process. I know, but sometimes, even on throw-ins when we're looking for stuff, just put the ball back in play. Does the lack of quality in this area bother you guys? It feels like an area we could really improve as we look to improve central access. Yeah, I just don't think we get that many free kicks. So, because of the way we play, I'm just going to look up that number while maybe I'll throw it to you, but I just don't think we get that many free kicks. So yes, it's annoying, but
I do find it very annoying, but I think the free kick point in terms of volume is very important to note here. We get a lot of indirect free kicks, from situations out wide, because by design we do look to funnel play more towards the wide areas for a number of different reasons. And obviously having most of our play in those sorts of zones means that we're winning fouls in those areas as opposed to centrally. Like, we don't get many free kicks in central areas because of the way we play. But what I want to reiterate is the fact that Arteta and, Arsenal under his stewardship have always mentioned about maximising the fine margins. And that is a fine margin right there, and that is something that we haven't maximised. And I think it is something that we need to improve on. I don't know what we could do internally. I think it is more kind of like exploring the market and finding specialists there. But it's kind of the trade-off, isn't it? Because you're not going to go out there and sign a player who's just a free kick specialist. You have to look at all the qualities. So it's...
And I think there's a margins thing as well. I think I remember seeing an article. Let me see if I can find it while I'm talking. I think I remember seeing an article about how free kicks are kind of like direct free kicks are kind of dying out. Because basically, if you think about it from a margins perspective, a shot on goal from that position with a wall and with everything set up, unless you have someone like David Beckham or James Ward-Prowse, you're probably better off passing and creating another situation, or whipping a ball into the box, or because you can kind of control that a little bit more. Otherwise, it's just a kick. I think when obviously when we had a free kick literally right outside the box, and at that point, there's kind of no point. But I imagine the numbers show that you get better outcomes that way. I found it. Yeah, the Premier League, 9 direct free kick goals last season. Wow. Which has gone massively down. In terms of the percentage of final third free kicks that are a shot, this is from Opta Analyst. From 2008-09, it was up at about 27%, and it's now down at about 16%. It's literally just a direct sort of go down. Average free kick distance, direct free kick distance has gone down. The amount of free kick goals has gone down. Yeah, so I think this is across the league, to be honest.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
But I wonder how many free kicks we do tend to get relative to the opposition, though.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some really good data on it, and so I'm sure someone's done it. But outside of that, but in terms of where teams win their free kicks, as teams pack the middle more, as teams are more compact, do you especially for Arsenal, because we use the wide areas. Yes, I would love a great free kick taker who could stick one top bins, but it's probably 1 goal a season. Yeah. If there's 9 free kick goals across a Premier League campaign for everyone. Well, that's half a goal each, isn't it? Yeah. So, Don't know. It's not.
But maybe it
unless
is
you
just,
have
you know,
James
we
Ward-Prowse.
talked about central access a lot about Arsenal, but if you actually look in terms of the trend in the league across all teams, it is going out wide. Like, granted, other teams progress play centrally more than us, but the driver is the wide areas, so maybe that's the big reason why you're seeing.
Yeah. Question from the Guna Sun, who
one.
says, "Hope all is well." Thanks, mate. My question is more of a fun thought express. Is everything well, Rohan?
Everything is very well.
That's good. If everyone, imagine you just actually no, mate. I'm really struggling. If everyone was fit, what is our starting 11? Quite a few nailed in, but then a few debates to have.
This is interesting, isn't it?
And let's not do the utter woke, Well, it depends on the game.
Oh, okay.
Champions League final. Champions League final against Real Madrid. Who do you want starting?
Raya
Gabriel Saliba.
Champions League final,
now,
yeah? Champions
League final
Timber.
next weekend, and everyone's fit against Real Madrid.
I think the right backs, that's a very interesting topic. I'll give you my case for Timber, right?
I'd go Timber because of Vinny Jr.
I just think Champions League, in one-off games, you're likely to be up against one of the top wingers out there. I want reliability 1v1. And I said it in the TCP Live on Thursday. I don't know if you think it's outrageous or not, but I believe Jurriën Timber at fullback is the best 1v1 defender I have seen since Ashley Cole at fullback. Like, I think he's that good 1v1. Better than Tommy
Before
Yasu.
Arsenal.
Before Arsenal, sorry. Yeah. And better than Sanya, better than Tommy Yasu in that regard.
Yeah. Left fullback. Got a lot of options. I would go Saka probably. No, I would go for. My heart is saying Miles. My head is saying Calafiori.
Go Calafiori. Yeah.
I think a fit and firing Calafiori just pips Miles.
I mean, it's just unfortunate that we've not seen enough of Calafiori, isn't it? So I reckon most people would say Miles, and I could understand that because Miles has been dropping 8/9 out of 10 performance week in, week out.
Yeah.
But Calafiori, you are seeing small bits of information every time he plays. We've not even spoken about him a lot. He had a fantastic second half, and look how good he is in pressure situations. Equally, Miles as well. It's a very interesting one, and I could see both sides, but I'd go Calafiori as well.
I'd be interested just in the plan that Mikel presented to him, whether he discussed Miles. Because I'm sure Calafiori's looking at him going, hang on a minute.
Yeah,
You're pretty good. And you're going to play. So where am I going to be? But, anyway, it'll work itself out. Midfield, Rice, Ødegaard, Partey probably.
You have to.
Rice, Ødegaard, Partey. And then I would go for Saka, Havertz and Martinelli, I think.
Yeah.
I think I'd go for that. First sub?
Depends on the game, state of the note.
It depends on the game. Me. Let's go to X. Let's ask some questions on X. Archton says, just a friendly reminder to call Spurs rubbish on the pod. Will do.
Oh, yeah, use that word instead.
Don't you worry. I'm not saying that. I got us demonetized yesterday.
Oh, really?
I had sort of a lot of questions about the midfield and so on.
We spoke about it, though, didn't we, really? So.
Here's a question from Edward Haggins, who says, would you rather City get relegated to League One and have their title stripped, or the Premier League get rid of PGMOL and hire global refs from next season?
B.
Yeah, I think B. That could be recency bias, but
honestly, I just want a game that is improved. I just want a game that is improved, and B does that. A is proper, that's good, but B, in terms of the integrity of the game, integrity of football in this country, B certainly helps us that. It wouldn't be perfect, obviously. You'll still have decisions that will be frustrating, but then that's the human side of it as well, isn't it? Referees can make mistakes, but I can guarantee you the game will be improved.
Yeah. I agree with that.
See, we're not petty, are we? We're not petty. We're going for the greater good here.
Oh, I am. I am. With the risk of sounding very reactionary, this is from Via on X, who says, with the risk of sounding very reactionary, should Wanyeri be moulded into a right wing rather than a right central midfielder, looking at his performance against Wolves? I think he'll play in the same way that Miles is starting out on the left. I think he'll play there just because he can. I think he has the retention quality. I think he has the 1v1. He's not Saka, but he's got the capacity there, so I think he could go there. I mean, it slightly limits his minutes, but I think he can share that role. Depends on the game between. Mikel always talks about this. Like, depends on the defenders between how they attack the spaces in behind. Depend on the game slightly, but yeah. I think long term I prefer him.
Yeah, long term, Ethan Wanyeri lives as an interior in the half spaces, the ability to drive in those sorts of positions, and we're talking about like Ben White in terms of helping us on the right-hand side in the attacking sense with the overlaps that he gives. That is with the idea of pushing Wanyeri more inside, which is what he would be doing if he was nominally in that right central midfield role. I think with Ethan, though, stylistically, he is the closest to a Bukayo Saka in our squad in terms of being able to come inside and those crosses towards the far post, but not long-term for me. I mean, I don't know if you can remember, but the Brighton game where he played right wing, I know he scored, but I didn't think he particularly played well. I felt a lot of his 1v1 moments against Stupinian were kind of like premeditated, so he was able to defend it really easily. So that's why I think, his long-term future certainly wouldn't be there for me. But I think Mikel's mentioned many times about versatility, isn't it? So maybe with the additions of a Naipan potentially, Ethan will get minutes on the flanks. So, yeah, but...
Yep, possible. Question from George Coles on the Discord, who says, how many more injuries will we get? And I'm sorry to do this again, but did you see the data I put out about the percentage of Premier League minutes?
Yes, sorry.
I won't read that out. I've already read it out on the Instant Reaction. If you want to put that, you can go check out my X account at @AMOnFootball. There are 6 players, and that was before yesterday, where I think all of them played. 6 players who have played 80% of the Premier League minutes or more. There are 5 players who played 60% or more. There's 1 player who's played 40% or more, and that's Mikel Merino, and the rest have played 0% or more, so somewhere between 0 and 40%. There's a lot of players who I think probably, I'm not, I'm not being harsh on someone like a Trossard, but 65% of the Premier League minutes feels like a lot for Trossard. I don't think everyone would have loved that. Someone like a Jesus, 30% feels quite low. Saka, 64% feels too low. Martinelli, 65% feels a bit low. Ødegaard, 61% feels too low. Even Rice on 79% feels a bit low. Tomiyasu on 0% feels very low. Calafiori, 36% feels very low. There's just a lot of players. White, 35%. It's almost like there's, Raya is the only person there with 100% of the percentage of Premier League minutes. I suppose the point that I was trying to make with posting it or sort of bringing it up is the lack of consistency, and how, again, maybe to go back and credit the guys for yesterday, because again, Ødegaard and Merino drop out and we have to react. And it sounds like both of those were last minute. That Mikel will have a game plan in mind of what he wants to do, probably involving Ødegaard and Merino, I would suspect. And he has to change the game. He has to do something different. Last minute again, and just the lack of consistency. There's a conversation around the sort of the calendar, etc., which maybe we could have as well. But I just want to praise this team, because when you put it like that, when how few people have no one in our squad has over 90% of the Premier League minutes. Everyone's dropped out at some point, apart from Raya. That is just, it tells you a lot.
We've been surrounded by a plethora of turbulence this season. There's not been continuity at all in any moment of the season. And when we do comparisons between Pep and Arteta, one of the big differences between the two is one likes to chop and change a lot, and he likes to experiment with different ideas and different players and different partnerships, whereas the other, being Mikel Arteta, he loves continuity and he needs that. And you see the very best of Arsenal when there is continuity in place. And we've not had that this entire season. And that is why I've said it many times. It's not excuses. So I find this conversation very interesting in terms of, like excuses around injuries and refereeing decisions, etc. If Arsenal were 5th, 6th or 7th and languishing and not competing, I would say yes, even with the injuries, there should be no excuses for Arsenal to not be doing better. But I'm sorry, in the context of a Premier League title, there are absolutely excuses as to why we are not where we want to be. There are absolutely excuses there. And if you don't think that, then I think you're being very disingenuous and it's lacking objectivity.
I agree.
Yes, Mikel has made mistakes this season. We can go back to the Everton game. We can go back to the Newcastle away game. But I can tell you now, he's also done a lot good this season in many moments in which we've had to go through adversity. We've had to play players who haven't played much, and then we've had to chop and change again because of things that we haven't been able to control. It's been very difficult to navigate. And for us to be where we are, kind of clinging on, I said it, I don't think we'll win the Premier League. I felt that after the Saka injury. But for us to still be there, that is a testament to the manager, and that is a testament to these group of players who have been doing everything they can to try and stay competitive. And this is the thing, when we're talking about Arteta on a broader scale, and people have this idea of maybe the players are starting to lose faith in the manager, it being, a third year in which we're looking likely not to win the Premier League. You watch Arsenal, there is not a chance that any of those players are not playing for the manager. They are running through a brick wall for him.
They're bought in.
Bought in completely. Like we just spoke about it. Look at the way that we changed our press and how the players implemented it so well, the change. This is a team that is playing for the manager. And I'm telling you now, you can criticise Mikel in the cup performances. I completely get that. But our league form this season, I can't go too much into the manager, and I can't go way too much into the players as well, because it's been very difficult to navigate. There's only like 3 or 4 teams who have been worse off in injuries. Now again, I'm talking about excuses in the context of a Premier League. We're still where we are, but we're not going to be able to get to that next step because we've not been able to have any sort of continuity. And that is something that Mikel needs a lot, and he's not been able to have it. And it's been frustrating. It is what it is, but yeah, I'm super proud of this team, especially after yesterday.
I am too, man. I am too. And yeah, as you say, when that incident happened on Saturday, I just thought, what are the "there's no excuses" guys going to say to this? Because at some point you can't ignore it anymore, and that's the frustration. I actually don't mind how high you put it, whether you think it's 100% of the reason we've fallen behind a little bit or 10% of the reason. I actually don't really mind. I have my opinion on it. But if you don't account for it at all, you are just being disingenuous.
Yeah,
like you really are. And I'd love to see, I don't know if anyone can do this, but I'd love to see the correlation between some sort of thing of like, maybe you do it with wages or whatever, in terms of the best players at the club and when they've been injured and the league position across maybe even just this season or last season's whatever. If you somehow put that on a graph, every single team, when their best players aren't available, drop off. It's not an Arsenal thing. I promise you. People think it's just us.
Yeah.
It's just this weird thing. They think it's just us. When our best players aren't available, we're bad. But when everyone else's best players are available, they cope. No, they don't.
I think you said it before. Like, if you told anyone this was going to happen this season, we're going to lose Bukayo Saka for a significant amount of time, we're going to lose Martin Odegaard for a significant amount of time, Declan Rice is going to be playing for injury, Mika Marino's had injuries, our star signing of the summer in Ricardo Calafiori is barely going to play, and all these other injuries that have happened, nobody would sit there and say Arsenal should still win the Premier League. Nobody would say that. I'd say exactly the same for Liverpool as well. If Liverpool had these sorts of injuries to likes of Van Dijk and Salah, I'd say, yeah, you can't win a Premier League in those sorts of conditions. So we need to be honest with ourselves as well. Yes, you can be frustrated with the manager in certain moments, but you can't surely sit there and think Arsenal should be winning the Premier League in this sort of context. Like, I just can't process that.
And also, if I'm looking through our Premier League results, as we're doing it, obviously excuses. Since Saka went down against Crystal Palace, we obviously won that game 5-1. We then beat Ipswich 1-0. We then beat Brentford. We then went away to Brighton and probably should have won that game, I would say, against Brighton. I know it's deserved to win FC, but we should have won that game. We then had the 2 unacceptable cup performances.
Yeah, unacceptable.
Absolutely. Unacceptable. Not good
Which we criticised him for.
We then, which we
exactly
criticised a lot. Then we had the North London Derby win. Then we had the game against Aston Villa, which we should have won. We nearly did win, apart from Havertz's arm. And if we weren't playing our fifth choice right back, we probably would have won. Then we beat Zagreb. Then we beat Wolves. In terms of how much we thought we could drop off without Bukayo Saka, I think there's a lot worse scenarios.
You know what? Actually, when you look at it like that, we've certainly done better than what I thought.
Same. 100%,
certainly, I genuinely thought we're going to see a significant drop off here. I mean, the Brighton game, for example, we got to remember, right? There was again a ridiculous refereeing decision that happened in that game, but also the entire camp had an illness. That was the game in which we had Thomas Partey at right back with Jorginho, Marino, Rice, midfield.
Ridiculous
come on.
Saliba, the ridiculous Saliba penalty. Two more things before we finish. Rohan, Liverpool have got to go away to PSV in the Champions League on Wednesday. Then they're away at Bournemouth on the 1st of Feb, on that Saturday. Then they are at home against Tottenham in the Carabao Cup and away against Plymouth in the FA Cup. And we forget that, they've got to go through these FA Cup fixtures and we'll have a few more on their plate, he says, hoping. They've then got to do the final Merseyside derby away at Everton. They then play Wolves at home. And before the end of February, they're away at Man City and they're at home against Newcastle. We've got to get our players back and fit. The likes of Ben White would be massive. We've got to make a signing. We've got to make a signing, and we're on the 26th of January. We haven't heard anything, although what we're hearing from David Ornstein and the various reliable reports is we are doing stuff. I suspect we're trying to do a lot of things, and we'll see what happens later on in the window. I think it's gone on too long, frankly, and I will say that when we sign someone, but there we are as well. It's gone on too long. Should have done something a lot sooner. But while you say, and I agree that I think the title is not in our hands, there's a lot of football there for Liverpool to play and a lot of tough games. So I remain open to it, I suppose is my position. I don't think we are going to win the league, but I remain open to it.
I mean, it's kind of like what we've said before, and the worst thing to happen is Liverpool drop off significantly and we are not there to pounce.
Yeah.
They drop off in a way in which even with the injuries, we could have done it, but we didn't do it. That would be the most painful thing to do. And that's why I think the Wolves game, the result yesterday was massive, because everybody knew Ipswich were going to get battered by Liverpool. Everybody knew that, So all we can do is just got to keep grinding it out. We've obviously got Man City next. They've got Bournemouth next away from home. So there's a very good possibility of them dropping points, especially with the form that Bournemouth have. And we've just got to be there to try and claw back the deficit as much as possible. I think the Aston Villa game last weekend was a killer, and I felt we played so well. A 10-minute spell of inexcusable individual defending. And the frustration has been is that Liverpool have dropped points, and we've dropped points in those game weeks as well, but stranger things have happened in football, and
for sure.
There's always a chance, but
mate, it's football. We've got to keep dreaming.
It's right, we'll win the Champions League, innit?
The final thing I wanted to come to is just to read out some fixtures, just for no reason. Tottenham versus Brentford, Sunday the 2nd of February, away at Brentford. Then they go away to Anfield in the Carabao Cup semi-final. Then they are away in the FA Cup to Aston Villa. Then they're at home against Man United in the Premier League. Then they're away at Ipswich. Then they're at home against Man City. Then they're at home against Bournemouth. Then they're away against Fulham. How many Premier League points? How many wins are they picking up there?
Not many. I think right now they're on course for 40. They're on course for 40 points.
Are they not even joking? Considering their position in the league, considering their injuries, when can we say they're in a bit of a relegation scrap?
No.
If not, when they're 15th, when they've not won in 6, they've. I think it's more than that, but they've lost their last 4 in the Premier League. They're 1 point above Everton. They just lost to Leicester, who are now climbed up to 17th. They are 8 points off the relegation. At what point, if we're joking about Man United or whatever, who are by the way 3 points ahead of them, at what point can we say they're in a relegation scrap? If
there's 3 game weeks left and they're only 3 points above the drop zone.
I think if they lose the next 2 or 3, I'm willing to declare Tottenham are in a relegation scrap.
Get Big Sam in.
Big Sam.
Do you think? I actually think they're only
better than Mate.
I actually think they're only keeping Ange in because of the Carabao Cup.
Potentially. Well, if he goes out, who knows? I want them to keep Ange because I hate him so much.
Yeah, it's kind of like you. Is it? Will there be a part of your life that is a small part of your life that is a little bit empty?
I'm gonna miss him doing.
Yeah, with Ange gone.
Yeah, because I can't do the accent as well.
The accent can't apply the press, but then the press has worked. The press is working anyway,
Exactly.
but then the press would have been completed.
I will say my role in bringing Ange down, I'm going to say is minimal.
But it's something.
But it was something. It was something. Thank you all for being here. If you got to the end of the podcast, thank you so much. Make sure you like if you're watching us on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe if you're listening to us on Spotify and Apple, etc. Thank you so much, my sweet Prince Rohan Jivan.
Nice one.
Nice one. Thank you for watching. Make sure you check out the rest of the Cannon Podcast content for the rest of the week. Keep your eyes peeled for all that good stuff. I'm not available for the live on Thursday. Have I told you this?
Yeah, you have told me.
I think I've told you this. I'm not available. So we George and Rohan. So enjoy that one. Thanks for watching. And thanks for keeping it Arsenal.